in the wind, I don't mean to offend. The greatest on the mic, mighty is with the pen. Losing never been a choice, but a line is a sin. Ascend and word, bending verse, birth in the gym. Akin to the best, never aiming for less. Opposition so foul, got me calling for rest. Who's next to get bested? Mind, soul, and flesh is antithesis of mess. It's the precious so free. So long, you better catch a God form to sing. Dreams manifested, you get what I mean. God always had a plan, he created for me. Success only means that I did what he seen. Got the game and the fans locked in like a key. Sitting on the throne with a crown, I'm a king. Sitting on the throne with a crown, I'm a king. Yeah, I think we got one.
Hey there.
How you doing?
Oh my goodness, it's so good to see you and to see you too, girl.
So good to be seen.
I love it. What they say is better to be seen than to be viewed.
Yeah, I think something like that. That's
oh my gosh. Thank you so much for joining us, Craig. I already know you ate. How you feeling?
Do you want me to show you my plate?
No.
I got it right here. You know what I'm saying?
There's this thing like I feel whenever I say I feel, I have to put in a feeling word. So maybe I have to say I think it's ghetto when people are on like platforms like this and they like crunching carrots. I mean, if that's the intent to eat food, but I just feel like conversation and food is always a great thing. It's just not.
At the same
we don't
time.
need to be recording and I don't know what that disorder is, but like smacking and mouth noises like really do something to my body.
I agree with you.
Smackination, I think is what it's called.
What is it called?
Smackination.
That is not what okay. Anyway, listeners and viewers, we have a very special guest here today. Y'all know we've been in our Uncharted series for season 3, and this is our 3rd guest. So this is one number of the completion, right? Because we may not have 7 guests, but this is the Holy Trinity here. And I am so excited to have my sister and my friend, Miss Dawn Moore, on today with us. She is an author, y'all. She is a speaker. We're going to give her some space to share, but she is the author of Humble Boldness. And so I'm excited about what she's doing, not just in our generic, community of people here online, but what she does in ministry as a mom, as a community supporter, as an advocate in the courts, like all the things that she does. She's just an amazing woman, and I'm so happy to know you. I'm so happy to be on this platform with you, and I can't wait to celebrate where this journey will take us. So please take time to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about why you're here.
Hell, I need to literally take you and put you in my pocket and pull you out when I need some confidence. Thank you so much. I am honored, first of all, to be a part of the Knight&Craig show. It is my honor and my complete delight to be spending this time with you guys. So a little bit about myself. I am an author. I've been with the courts for 35 years, so I have learned to take that type of ministry of what I believe God has placed me here for people, and I've done that in the justice system for quite some time. I've worked several litigations, but I won't bore you with all of them, but it's been 35 years. I am a mom of 2 adult sons. They're pretty awesome human beings. Not that I had anything to do with it, but yeah. I'm a recent author. Michelle mentioned I was an author. I'm a recent author. I released 2 books last year. I am a prayer warrior. I'm a certified national Christian counselor. I am a sister, a friend. I'm an ex-wife.
Come on.
I'm a cousin.
She laughed at that one, though.
I mean, you gotta laugh. You gotta laugh sometimes. I mean, it took a lot of tears to get to that place, even be able to say that. So
right.
That's a whole nother. That may be a show topic too. How many tears did you cry before you could say what you needed to say?
Right, and to be able okay being an ex of something, right? Sometimes it's full of rejection, but like you said, that's another story. I have a branding and marketing consulting firm, and my job is to market Midwife people's visions to fruition, so that way they can be planted in the earth and do the things that are great. So that's a little bit about me.
I love that. Craig and I were talking about that offline when we first decided to do this show, and you were so gracious to accept the invite. I mean, nobody wanted to touch the topic, and we were like, we got to do it. And you're like, I'm a marketing midwife. And I was like, ooh, that is so good. That is so good, because Craig owns his own printing company, so he does a ton of marketing. So just to have two experts in the room in that area around branding and being able to, I bring out the best in people in different ways. And some people might say I don't bring out the best in them, but I think I do. And I think if you don't know me, then shame on you.
Bring out the best in me.
Okay. So you mentioned Natasha Bedingfield's Pocket Full of Sunshine too, and I was going to, just throw that in there. But we are excited. Craig and I have had this topic of soul ties on our docket for over a year now, because we've been doing this show. We got history. Over a year, or about it. Well, it's been a year since we started, but we didn't launch right away because we were scared and we wanted to stack up our shows and have some people review and do all the things. But yeah, this topic has been following us since season 1 into season 2, and we kept pushing it. Soul ties are interesting, and some people believe in them and some people don't. So Craig, I would love to hear your perspective, because I think you've heard more people who don't believe in them than do.
Yeah, and it's funny is you use the term soul ties are following me around, and that's actually what they do, right? That they're designed to. It's people, it's places, it's things, it's the nouns that we find ourselves involved with in life that we're still tethered to in a positive way, and which can be healthy in those healthy relationships, healthy marriages, healthy friendships, healthy families. But then there's also those negative soul ties, the ones that bind us up, the ones that keep us up at night, the ones that are there, that, where we're crying and wanting to be with a person that doesn't want to be with us, instead of being the me that we've always wanted me to be, right? But always wanting to then be on their terms. And so those negative soul ties, ex-lovers that you belong to, are still craving for, those what have you called them, folks that come by? Oh yeah, the we're not going to talk about those, but the ones that just come by for the quick whatever, those soul ties that people weren't supposed to be with, those people soul ties as well. And so when we deal with the soul tie, we deal with them, we have to call it what it is, because even if you're in the church,
I thought you were being funny about family members, and you're up here talking about adult calls in the middle of the night.
Hey, it's
3 in the morning. Or is it 6? I don't know. 6.
It depends on when the call comes through.
Okay, so that's what I keep reminding the people, it does not matter whether he eats. We made sure that he had enough protein, and this is still what we get. So you're welcome.
I'm just saying the things that some folks are thinking or having a memory or a flashback about, because some folks are flashbacking. I go, oh yeah, how do you know?
Did you say flashback?
Yeah, flashbacking.
Ooh.
Not flashbacking, because some folks are speaking. Was already having a sweat breakout on the last time they had their little booty call. I'm just saying, when you're tied to the stuff that keeps your soul craving for the things that are not of God, that's a soul tie. Call it what you want. I ain't gonna be super churchy, super sanctified. I'm gonna tell you the truth.
No, it's the truth.
Because the truth will make you free.
If you're watching, my mouth has literally been open, and then if you're listening, I'm just letting you know my mouth was open, because depending on when you come into this show, you may not even know what the conversation is, because it's already twisting and turning. And Craig C. Carlisle did that.
I'm sorry.
So, Don, tell us why you were excited, because I'm telling you were excited when I called and told you what the topic was, and we have not had that experience. So what was it about this topic that you wanted to be a part of the conversation?
Because people, like Craig just was sharing, people make it, they're not honest about it, right? And they make it this taboo thing, right? When I start really thinking about soul ties and the journey of that, like Craig said, it's always had this negative thing. Like you tie to somebody, but the truth of the matter is that if you're not operating, you know, if your soul isn't tied to God, right, in a way, then it can have those, you know, flashbacks, right? That's funny.
Did he put that as a thing?
Flashback, right? But I was really drawn to it because it is something in particular that I have been dealing with for the past 2 or 3 years as I've been doing my own soul searching, right?
Yeah.
And I wanted to figure out, you know how they say, you know, you have your mind, body, spirit, and your soul, right? So I was like,
yes.
What does my soul say, right? Because you tell God, if you're a believer, you know, my soul belongs to you. You're the lover of my soul. But is he really?
But is he really?
Really? Because if you're tied up in so many different things. So this topic is very important to me because as I'm journeying in my own soul searching, I want to find out what's real and what's not, what I've been connected to, what I'm no longer connected to, and what I can be honest and truthful about. So I think it's a necessary conversation for every single person. No one is accepted. It's an inception to it.
I love what you're saying because it ties into what the last show that we aired around grieving the living. And sometimes these I'm gonna put it up here, being aware of these flashbacks, you know, you don't always grieve the death of a person or the death of a relationship in the same way that you would if they were physically gone, you know, in the ground, spirit in heaven, or wherever you believe the afterlife is, versus having to deal with that person in the flesh that you've had these connections with. And seeing them or being activated by their presence, realizing like maybe I'm not being as real with myself as I thought I was. I thought I was over him, or I thought I was over her, or I thought it was okay for me to go back to Universal Studios where my heart got broken. But when I do go back, or when I decide that I'm going to interact, or I'm in a place where I have no choice but to interact, then how do I act? How do I behave? Because that soul tie kind of dictates that behavior when we're not honest about where we are in ourselves and in the relationship with that person, depending on how we're grieving it. So I thought that was interesting.
You know what? Now, the honest to God truth is I was having a conversation with someone that we had made a decision, God made a decision, that we were going to restructure our interaction with one another, right? And one of the many conversations that we had, the one that made me say, now, wait a minute. The person said this to me. The Lord said for you to release your soul from this relationship. So, you know, you emotional, you looking around like my soul, like my soul is that thing when we use the word soulmate. We use all these things to intertwine ourselves. And that really, if I'm thinking about it, that's when my journey began. Because I don't know if I like that. I mean, the Lord told this person to tell me this, but I don't know if I like the way it sounded because it felt dismissive. It felt like some form of rejection. So then I had to go on this journey about what does my soul really hold? And it holds my emotions, it holds my feelings. And so when I started dealing with that, I'm like, so really it's not a bad thing that I'm not being controlled by my emotions, because my soul is being controlled. So maybe it's not a bad thing. So that's really what started the journey for me to be like,
I love it because when we walk through things that hit us a certain kind of way and make us feel some kind of way, it's because it hurts our feelings a lot of times, right? And we don't always want to be caught in the wrong. At least I don't want to be. I always want to be the one on you know, always in the best light.
Right.
And sometimes, because you know, folks on the ground, they want the folk get my good side, get my light for the ground, right?
Right.
Sometimes our profile, neither one are right because we live in the darkness, and we have to be honest with ourselves and be honest to the Lord. Say, Lord, I do some stuff that's jacked up several times a day, and we always want to look a certain way and think we're right, but call out everyone else's sin. But truly, I saw someone post this a couple of days ago. everyone else is just like us. They just sin differently. And so we all leave it alone and just deal with our own problems and do like Sean, like Dawn, like you said, and deal with our own mess first.
Yeah.
And then let it go. But
yeah. Soul searching.
Yeah, absolutely. When we were on our strategy call, I was sharing a little bit around that soul tie and letting that go for me, because there's been different eras in my life, different moments in time in my life where my soul was attached to different things for different reasons, whether it was a marriage, whether it was a second marriage, whether it was a friendship. As my daughter told me, you're gonna have to break up with some of your little friends. And I was like, you 10, who you talking? But that was the Lord, because I already knew that was, what I needed to do. And so there are two things only. Two things. So number one was, what is it that's within me that's so toxic that I want to be connected to something that I know is toxic? Why am I connecting myself with something that I know is no longer serving me? That was one. And then the second part of that is, why am I allowing those things to control me? Why am I allowing that relationship that I was in that served its purpose, good, bad, or indifferent? If I learned from it, there was a purpose that was served to bring me to this place. Why am I allowing that to hold me? And Dawn, in that conversation, you had brought up dealing with denouncing yourself. And so I would love for you to share a little bit about that and what that means to you now that you've identified that there is an issue, now that you've had some conversations. What does that mean to denounce yourself?
What I've learned about the denouncing process and denouncing yourself is releasing, right? Releasing yourself to be free from the emotional hold that you have. It could be a circle of friends, like you mentioned, because there is some portion of some type of insecurity or validation that requires you to stay connected or plugged into a person, a group of people, a place, an environment, right? So denouncing and saying, you know what? And the most important thing about denouncing that I've learned is denouncing yourself even when you're not completely sure how you're doing it. Just start taking a walk. Just start taking a walk. And I think sometimes we stay longer, which hence creates all these multiple soul ties. Because I am denouncing a relationship, intimate relationship with someone, and then I am denouncing a relationship, a sister friendship, allegedly with a friend that I think is, if I'm not quite cutting the girlfriend friendship, that takes a minute sometimes, right? The emotional portion of the soul tie of a romantic relationship, it holds you, because it'd be the flesh part, right? That holds you a little longer. But if I have all these unfinished, undenounced relationships, then I have multiple soul ties. And so I think the important thing when denouncing yourself is saying, I'm no longer attached to this emotional feeling that forces me to continue to be in this relationship with whomever this person is. Family,
love
friend,
that.
Right? So that's when denouncing yourself and saying, no, Don, even if you don't feel 100% comfortable, you just need to take that first step in releasing the thing that's holding you, the insecurity, you may have a friend that always pumps you up. Girl, you itch, you that, which may be cool sometimes, but if you got all this time doing this for me, then now I become a crutch for you. So I need to be okay with saying, nah, girl, I ain't all that all the time. Right?
Yeah.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
There's a realness.
Fact too, because in my life, what that looks like is I have a friend that I had a real recent conversation. We in fact shared on the last show about getting the conversation that you were really, or the apology that you really thought you may never get, but you really, really wanted. I used to watch their social media, and they would have gatherings and events at their home that I wasn't invited to, and I would feel some kind of way. And I'd be like, well, why didn't they invite me? And I used to really begin to take it personally and think maybe there's something wrong with me. Maybe they just don't really like me. Maybe it's just whatever. Maybe it's because my situation is different than theirs, or whatever it is. But it had nothing to do with that. But I didn't get it into it recently because I was in my own feeling about what I wanted from them, and I wanted to be wanted. But it just because I didn't get an invite to their event doesn't mean they didn't want me. It's just they didn't want me at that event. That at that particular time, that wasn't a space for me. It's their own life. They could do whatever they wanted to do because it's their life without ever being disrespectful to me. It was me. I had made up the story. I had made up the reason. I had made up the thought that I wanted so badly to be wherever they were. Was the song I want to be where you are. I was there. Oh, and I was the one jacked
I don't
up.
think that's the right beat for that song.
It probably isn't. It's the remix.
I'm not even going to attempt to sing it.
It's the remix. I'm just saying. So it's that part of a soul tie where it's not healthy when we start feeling some kind of way, and then we become triggered because whatever someone else may go do that makes it feel like something else or somebody else did to us, that's a problem. And I know during that time we had said that trigger still trigger and tie still bind. If you still find yourself angry at a person, a place, or a thing because something happened there, you did like the Bible times that they built an altar there to remember some significant blessing. Not necessarily a negative place where we then tied ourselves to that place. And some of us stayed stuck in time a long time for us to be there. So we need to be able to do that. And we also talked in the strategy session that we have to remove the trigger, cut the tie. And that's the only way we can be free, because we can only handle the tie that's on our side because it's one way. Whatever else, if someone's tied themselves to us, we can't help them.
Right.
Because we might not even know.
Right.
This part of the conversation kind of, I think we each had our different, maybe I think Don, you and I, and maybe it's because we're women, maybe it's because we're besties, I don't know. But we kind of were on the same page, and we were kind of questioning Craig a little bit, like, well, about the trigger and, having your finger on that trigger, and if the trigger is still there, how do you actually do that? So when you were talking, Craig, just a moment ago, I was thinking about a conversation I had with one of my friends, and it was during the time that my husband and we had moved up here, up north, intentionally, so we can be grounded in all the things that, walking in our promise and abundance and all of that. And it wasn't that we thought we were all that or anything, but we started being very specific about who we were entertaining, not just in our home, but in our space. So whether that was at dinner, whether that was in our home, whether that was at church, just kind of started categorizing different groups of people and realized I'm more the extrovert in this coupleship. So that I didn't have to have everybody there, and all my friends didn't have to be friends. And sometimes that's actually not a good thing, because I have different history, different experiences with different people. And so for this particular party, it was for my husband's birthday party, and we decided that he wanted to have like his friends. He doesn't have very many people that he calls friends, but in that way, he mostly hangs out with married men or has relationships with married men, which means that I'm probably friends with the wife, or I've introduced him to the wife and the husband. Long story short, it was a private invitation. And one of my friends was recently divorced. If she was married, I would have invited her and her husband. It wouldn't have been a problem. But because we had always shared this connection and this tie, she called me because one of our mutual friends was invited and said, "Hey, you going to Shell and Steve's party?"
Yeah.
That was the thing. And so she actually called me and said, the only reason I can think of why I wouldn't be, like, is there a problem? Is the only reason I can think of is why I wouldn't be invited is because these are Steve's friends. And I said, exactly. I said, that's exactly it. There's no issue between me and you, so don't make it that. But what I'm or I don't want to make it that. I don't want to sound like I was in control of the conversation. It was a conversation that was necessary because both of our lives had transitioned. But in this case, we needed to do what was necessary in that season for us to do to reestablish the norms and renegotiate what those terms are for our relationships. So I'm curious, Dawn, in your experience, how has that worked for you when you needed to renegotiate the tie that you have with someone? Maybe it's not negative, but maybe it's not what it has always been. What does that look like for you?
What I what I'm thinking of when you ask that question is I figured out that people have emotional and biblical cords that they plug into you, or you plug into other people.
Say more.
So I had to deal with the fact that this is an emotional and biblical cord situation where, like, your girlfriend, she could have taken it 100 different ways, right? If you would have said, she settled it with, you know, those must be Steve's friend, right? Because that could be a whole nother can of worms, like, I'm not good enough to be around Steve's friend. Or she could have just said, well, oh, so now that I'm not married anymore, I can be around. Either way she would have took it, it was emotional.
Yes.
So how I've dealt with it is I'm very careful about who I let plug their emotional and biblical cord to me, because it's very draining. Because then now I have to watch, I'm dealing with their soul, because their soul, you know, houses their emotions and their feelings and all the things. And then I, in turn, have to be careful when I'm plugging mine in. So I will ask myself quite often, what is this? Because I'm soul searching, right? I'm like, John, are you acting codependent right now? Because that's really what the emotional and biblical cord is, right?
There it is.
And so I'm like, am I being, you know, clingy? And so I've experienced that, because when you go through a journey where you're trying to rid yourself of all the things, as Craig mentioned at the beginning of our conversation, not allowing yourself to be tied to God, right? And more of people and the emotions that come along with them, good and bad, right? Then you leave yourself open for those type of situations, and you find yourself explaining, right? And if you're anything like me, Michelle, even though me and her had the conversation, in the back of my mind, I'd be like, well, I hope she's not feeling it. I mean, I'm not really tripping because I had the conversation with her, but I don't want her to feel away. And then you're subconsciously counting the next time she reaches out. Like, oh, it's been 3 weeks now. Is she really mad? Are we really cool? And so that's the part that draws you in emotionally. And somehow we're tied up now, because even though we talked, your emotions, because you're a caring person and you love her and you don't want her to feel a certain way. I think that's the most difficult part sometimes when you're having those kind of conversations, like, because then you don't want to come off like girl, right? Because you love the person. But I think that's how the soul tie things gets real tricky. Because I think that before, we only left it with relationships between couples, right? But we're like, oh, that's one time you get a soul tie. No, they last in so many different ways. And so when I think of that, I think of the emotional and biblical cord.
The word that you said is codependency, and that's a real thing as well, because when as mothers, the baby's in the womb, that's what's connecting you, that's what's feeding, that's the lifeline between you and whatever you put in your body. That's going to affect them, and whatever upsets them is going to upset you. And when we have that type of bond with someone, and Craig, I want you to talk a little bit more about that altar, because I think that's a dangerous place for us to set up this altar or this shrine. And you talked about in another show about how you were, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but the takeaway was like you were using this person or engaging with this person as if they could answer your needs, as if they were a God, not the God, but talking to them instead of talking to him. And so I'm curious. I want to dissect that a little bit around this altar that we create around these relationships, and how that's a dangerous place. Because what are we worshiping? What are we doing when we're on the altar? What are we inviting in? What is that umbilical cord connected to use your analogy on? So Craig, I would love to hear your voice on that. So
we're definitely sacrificing who we are, sacrificing our relationships, sacrificing just our mindset, because in biblical time, when they built an altar, it was a sacrifice. It was a blood sacrifice. It was an animal that they put, and they were using it as a sacrifice to a god, right? People say, oh, they sacrifice animals to God too. Okay, I get it. But that was a reverential thing in a multi-god philosophy, or a polytheistic philosophy. You make offerings of sacrifice and reverence and commitment to other gods. And we do that in our relationships with people, where we'll stop at the place where someone hurt us last, or we stop at the place where someone died, or we stop at the place where my relationship died, or I lost a family, or I lost something. And we don't change our clothes style, we don't change our car style, we don't change our conversation, we don't grow beyond that moment. And our conversation always centers around the things that happened during that season, during that era. And let's not get it twisted and be super spiritual about it. It also happens when people have had their greatest successes in life. If you look at some men, some women had the same styles they've been rocking since the 70s, same Letterman jacket when they was in high school. They had the time of their life. They looked like Magnum PI when Magnum PI was on TV.
Listen, don't talk about Magnum. That's my secret. Listen,
that's cool. But
Tom Selleck, that's my dude.
Magnum PI.
That's true. I'm just saying.
Them shorts.
But even Tom Selleck in was it Cold Blue Bloods?
Yes, sir.
It still looked like he did back when he was on Baywatch, right?
That's not the same guy.
Baywatch is David.
Oh, David Hasselhoff. Sorry, my bad. Sorry, so I'm wrong now.
Don't mix up my men now. I know.
Either way, Craig, you're dating us.
Yeah.
Wow.
But here's the thing. But that's really the point, right? Because some folks want to stay stuck in the time when they had the time of their life. And they won't allow themselves to continue to have times as they lived out their life, right? Because the scripture says, we walk by faith and not by sight. And it's so easy to, God, I walk by faith. That's what I'm doing. Oh, they want to fall out and be, foam in the mouth, cover the drop sheet on whatever. They want to have it. But the scripture actually says, as I'm walking out my life, as I'm living it day to day, moment by moment, as I'm going from this period of time to the next, I make that walk. I walk with faith, not being stuck where I was because I didn't believe I was ever going to be happy anymore, or I wasn't going to be any happier than I am right now.
Yeah.
That's a tough place to be when you don't have faith in God enough to believe that you can be beyond that moment in time.
My. That's it.
And we never want to stay on that altar like that. That's an altar we need to crawl off of. We need to burn it down. We don't need to. But even in biblical times, when they built an altar, it was to remember a good time in God. They had a feast and they kept it moving. And it was a representation for someone else that was coming behind them to read and hear about that story. Or if they ever had to pass that way again, they can celebrate as they were on their way. They never built a town, right? They built an altar for the moment. And that's what we need to get back into that mindset. Build an altar, build a monument, remember the time, and keep it moving.
Yeah.
Wow. That's powerful.
You had mentioned in our strategy session, don't let the soul tie keep you from moving forward. I think we all said something like that in our own way. And I think that is true to keep it moving. Remember the time. I'm always disturbed when I see people. Here I go. I'm just gonna say it because if they see it, then they'll know. Because I don't need to put this on social media in that way. I'm always disturbed when there are certain people that I see from my past, and they only remember me from my past. Like, oh, remember that one time when we was at the club and we did, and I've mentioned this before. There's another thing that bothers me even more than that. This is I lost my dad. My dad died in 2007. It bothers me when other people, non-family members, post videos and things like that, memorializing or altering, making an altar of his death. I have a strong opinion about that is something that they should not do, because they don't know how it activates me, and also how it might activate my mom, who's moved on with her life. All of us, that we have 13 kids in our family, so it could be an activator for any one of us, and I just don't think that that's the right thing to do. And so to me, that's a form of a soul tie. When you have an my opinion is the unhealthy relationship. I'm not saying all of them have an unhealthy relationship with my parents or with my dad, but I saw the way you treated my mom. That's one thing. But number two, when we try to have a relationship with the dead in that way, where the relationship cannot be reciprocated. That is a codependency, and the altar comes up again of how do you celebrate? How do you celebrate the past? How do you celebrate where you're going? How do you celebrate the present? How do you acknowledge who someone has been to you and what they've done without having that attachment of being stuck in that space? And that's the sense that I get when I see some of that. So, oh, those were the good old days. Well, what the heck have you been doing for 15 years? If those are the only good old days, what have you been doing with your life that is the only representation, or that's the only thing that I see you post about, the only thing that you talk about? It ain't his birthday. It ain't Father's Day. You just out here posting stuff from the past. How is that helping you to live in the now? What is that doing to your relationships? And so I'm still there in the topic of soul ties. How are these things that we have allowed to anchor us to this past impacted our present and where we're going? We got to deal with this stuff because it is holding us back. It is absolutely holding us back when we are connected to a relationship that is no longer serving us, and will never in perpetuity serve us ever again. But we're so connected to that. What's going on with us?
I think one of the things, as you were talking, one of the things that came to mind for me was experiences. People hold on to their last. So even people running into you, you're a totally different person. You've transcended, transformed. God has done his thing and continue to do his thing, right? But they only want to acknowledge their last experience with you. And so I think people get stuck on the quote unquote good old days. And what you said made so much sense, because if we're waking up to every day to new mercies, right? And how on earth are you even experiencing half of what God has for you if we're stuck in the last experience of what felt good?
Yes.
And that's the thing about soul ties. Soul ties are about feelings and emotions, right? And so the only thing that I can remember is, God bless you, a time that somebody was in my life. Like, listen, this is a free space. I'm just gonna go for it, right?
Go for it.
I have two wonderful sons. So if I were to go back to when I was having them and all the things and go back over their lives, there were some incredible moments, right?
Yeah.
But I was also with my ex-husband. So that's a season in my life that is past, right? So if I refer to my sons' lives back then as the good old days, really? Like, what am I talking about? Because my latter days will be better than my former days. Right?
Yes.
So for me, we have to be really careful about our experiences. And so one of the things that hits me too, Michelle, I've had people have experienced very colorful things about my vocabulary in the past when they have angered me. Right? And so some people have said that my vocabulary is really colorful. I mean, Don used to really be real. I mean, they talk about it like it was a badge of honor. At the time, I guess it was, because I could get it off real quick. But I asked one of my girlfriends who brought that up to me. I said, all right, we've been friends 40 years. Name me the last time, because we're still friends, that you experienced that. And she was around like, so people will hold you with this. They will hold you to the experience that makes them feel the most comfortable about you. So because I was operating beneath who she probably saw that I was, right? She grasped that part, and that made her feel comfortable. So she's gonna hold on to the experience. So if you was in the club and you was getting turned up and having a good time, that made them comfortable. Because if anybody has a glimpse of your potential at a certain position in your life,
Yeah.
If they even see what you don't see, recognize yet, they want to hold on to the experience that makes them feel the most comfortable.
And that part there helps relationships become disintegrated, right? It will kill a relationship faster than anything, because when a person sees you at a certain level here, they're comfortable with it. And as you put the work in to want to change, make the changes for yourself, and you step up and you skip levels, and all of a sudden some folks are going to become uncomfortable, like you said, with where you're going, because they were comfortable with you being the whatever you were that you were they were comfortable with back then. But when they see a different part, or like Michael just said, then just another side of me, there's another part of me that makes them feel like something's wrong inside of themselves. And the issue is with them. The issue is not with you, because you've put in the work to make the changes that you've always wanted to make, and it has nothing to do with them. And you're okay with everything. Again, that's what we talked about. Soul ties are one way. Some folks have a soul tie to us that we may never know about or understand if it's healthy or not, because that's their issue. And one thing I want to make sure the folks who are listening and watching understands that we're not want to paint a soul tie in a purely negative way, because there's some positive soul ties. There's some close relationships we have, friends, family, children, you name it, that are positive. Those are the ones that make you, that remind you of the good times, and that are present, that when you need something and they need something emotionally and mentally, you're already there in advance. I should call so-and-so. I should text so-and-so. I feel a certain way that so-and-so needs something. Let me reach out to them and comfort. And those are the positive soul ties that there's nothing wrong with. But these other ones, the codependent soul ties, that's where the problem is. That becomes more of the popular ones, like Michelle was saying earlier, that we've got to all do our own shaking and cutting off all of those triggers, separating. If you can't separate yourself from the person, you've at least got to separate yourself from the behavior. And some of us are work in progress. All of us are works in progress. It takes time to decide which relationships, which ties we're going to cut, and which ties we're going to continue to let bind, good or bad.
Wow.
I love when you were you're spot on, Craig. And I love when you were talking about your sons. Reminded me of the conversation we were having, and I was saying I've always been mindful of the type of person, the type of mother and the type of woman that I wanted to be after my divorce with my son's father, and they at times look just like him. There is a picture of Taylor, you can barely tell the difference, except it was a different, like it was in the 90s, and Taylor wasn't born in the 90s. But if you look at that picture, that boy, my mom has a bad habit of going up to somebody that she thinks is somebody else, and she'll just hit him. Like she did that. She just hit this man upside his head because she thought it was my brother. And he's like, Sister Paige, And so that's the way you want to be with Taylor sometimes. And so another two things, but in a different way. So when I saw Taylor a particular Sunday recently, I said, boy, look out here looking like your daddy, like that. And Big Daddy, Steve, was like, why did you say that? And I was like, oh, I didn't mean anything by it. I mean, literally, he looks like his dad. But Steve has been there from 8 on. So it's kind of like that could have been taken like, are you reminiscing about him or what? He's not that insecure, but it was just that moment. Soul tie. The other thing, when they were younger, going back to how I wanted to be, I didn't want to be bitter. I didn't know what my relationship was going to look like after the divorce, but I knew that I wanted them to know that no matter what, it wasn't about them. The divorce wasn't about them and something that they did, because I heard a lot of people growing up in divorced families and they feel like they were the cause of their parents' divorce. So I knew that. And I knew that I did not want to have them mad at me for the way that I treated them because of the relationship I had with their dad. And I remember growing into that and maturing and going, there are always 50% of that man, regardless. So if I'm mad and I'm like, you're acting like your daddy, and they know I have an issue with that thing, then they're going to think that I don't like them. And what I'm really focused on, this is what activated this thought, Craig, because you said about the behavior. It's really the behavior that I want to address. I wanted to address that. Please don't behave like that, because I know where that leads. But to compare that to someone that they know I am disconnected from, and maybe as they got older, they understood why it was important for me to disconnect from that person. I never wanted them to think that there was anything that they would ever do that I would disconnect from them from. So I think that's so important to address that generational aspect, and not excuse my behavior for the sake of, well, I didn't mean it like that. It's still the way that the impact happened, and being very aware that my perspective of my soul tie, my connection, especially as it relates to co-parenting or having another, co-parenting, I'll leave it at that. I didn't want to pass that on to them. My perspective of that person, of their dad,
And you didn't want to make them ever feel like there's anything wrong with them.
Exactly.
Because they're from the other person. And even us being in the relationships that we were in the past, codependent, soul tied, or whatever, all things work together. Romans 8:28 covers that.
That's it.
Now, some of it may fall in the permissive will of God category, because it's just it happened because we chose to make it happen.
Yeah.
But it's all works together for those that, one, love God, and two, are called according to his purpose. So some of us need to take that children of Israel trip around the mountain 40 more times to get it right. Some of us just need to be able to look at, like, where's that going? It goes here. Okay, I'm good.
Good. I'm out.
Right.
One
of the things that you said, Michelle, that I thought it was spot on, right? Because one of my sons looked just like his dad from birth. And then my younger son looked like me. I mean, down to the skin color, right? Then when they got older, they switched. So my babies are looking like the dad. I mean, he's built like his dad and everything. So one of the things that I didn't give myself, this had to be the Holy Spirit, because I wouldn't have thought. But I told my ex-husband, I said, look, and I told my boys this. I said, they are the best parts of me and you. Is what I told them. And I told my sons that. I said, look, you guys are old enough to know that me and your dad ain't perfect. I said, but you two are the best parts of us combined. And I told that to my ex-husband, because I think he needed to hear that, because the boys obviously stayed with me, lived with me. I mean, he was a part of their lives and all that stuff, but I'm saying they lived with me. And that was the way that I believe the Holy Spirit gave that to me. The Lord gave that to me, so that way I wouldn't tip sometime into the, you acting just like your daddy, right? You're acting like, and like you said, anytime we say it in a certain way, it can come off, like we're doing that. And now that my boys are adults and they're dating, and one of them is, I think they both are kind of dating for marriage. I mean, that's their mindset. They're not getting married anytime soon, but that's their thought process. My younger son, he talks a lot. He went to Morehouse. And so when he came back home, he grew up quick. He was like, Mom, let me tell you this. And I was like, oh, that 4 years really did something in your mind. But he talked a lot about soul ties and the intimacy of different women, and how, he came back with I think it was the succubus spirit. I believe that's the name of it. But he just, I think it was succubus. Is it the succubus?
Succubus,
Succubus spirit. This whole, intimate thing.
Yeah, it's a whole separate conversation.
It's something else, right? So my son came back talking about that, Craig, right? And he was just sharing with me about having soul ties. And I was looking at him like, at the time, I'm like, boy, you're 22. Like, what are you talking about? But he started identifying how the exchange of being in different relationships and friendships, how he was getting himself tied with people, right? And it made me think about our insecurities and our past experiences, and how people see us, and what people need for us to be, and what we need to be to other people. I think that's where the soul ties us, and it just becomes a lot, right? Because we're trying to balance. At that point, for me, I can say that I found myself balancing emotions friend groups, right? Like I'm the same person everywhere I go, but everybody needs something different from me.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Yes.
And so then me probably needing to be these things to these people, I became a soul pusher, right? Like pushing drugs, right? It's allowing people to connect to me and me connect to them because we're all needing something emotional as opposed to putting our feelings on the altar and then letting God give us back wholeness and peace and joy and understanding, right? So it's a journey.
Beautiful.
It's a journey. It's a journey.
I know there was a good one here that we talked about. Don't be addicted to your feels. That one came up because sometimes when we've got a soul tie to someone that we really craved the relationship with, they don't even have to have been a physical relationship. It's easy to talk about the physical. Those are the popular ones, the more the easier ones to talk about.
But we recognize it as that once we're out of it, right? We're like, "Ooh, why am I thinking I smell that cologne? You know, that reminds me. You remind me of my G. You know, like all of that. You know."
But sometimes these are friendships. Sometimes these are even parents and our children, the helicopter parents. And I used to wonder, what does that mean? For years, like, what the hell are you talking about, a helicopter parent? And then I watched a parent hover over their children and just basically orchestrate the child's life and never let the child develop at all. Those are situations where the person themselves, the parent, is addicted to the child, to having the child around, and has a soul tie in an unhealthy way to that child. It could even be, other family relationships. It could be just good friends. It could be relational, but it even could become to pets, dogs, cars, or stuff like that, where if I don't have this car, if I don't have this, if on game day, if I don't do this routine, it takes the faith away from God to allow him to have order our steps, because we get so addicted to just having this thing, this person, this place in our possession, in our presence, the way we want it on our terms. That's not healthy.
Yeah. Craig, I know you have the Raising Men show, and I think I've shared with you before when I realized that the spirit of manipulation was a generational curse for that very with my kids, because for partially that very reason. When we don't grow up with responsibility or consequences, and we still get rewarded, we're rewarding the bad behavior. Therefore, you throw in a little drugs, a little alcohol, and your brain stop working right, and it stunts your growth and all of that. Then we end up in a very, very dangerous place as an adult, as a chronologically an adult in age, but our minds are not mature because we haven't had those types of things. They're really smart kids that skip grades. They're socially immature sometimes, and that's what happens as well. So I'm bringing this up because Don and I have both raised. I know we have a tribe. I know we have a community. I know I'm now in a good place with with my husband. It wasn't always like that in terms of who my husband was and what was going on in their lives, but we have literally raised men. And that is a conversation that I have a lot. I wasn't raising boys, I was raising men. So Don, I do think that there is some conversation you and I can have about that, because I brought it up on the show before. We're not men. We're women. And so we don't know nothing really about being a man. I would love to invite you back at some point, whether it's on this platform or another, to explore that, because I shared with Craig too. I think that it causes women sometimes to take on a more masculine approach that keeps us from not showing our soft side with them, but with the next person. You talked about your forever husband, in just conversation here, but it keeps us from unlocking or being willing to unlock that soft side once we have unlocked that masculine side of what we need to do in order for our sons not to perpetuate. I'm not saying they're dads or all men are dogs or anything like that. I'm saying that there are some things that come through the seed and that we're giving birth to, that we may or may not be privy to know because we're women.
Yes.
And when it shows up, how do we deal with that? So I would love to take that conversation offline, but it's relevant for what we're talking about now, that some of these things that are showing up,
So
the way that they're connected to us.
I would absolutely love that, because it's
Yeah.
been something that, like you said, we'll talk at a different time and in a different space. But like when Craig was mentioning the helicopter parent, mom, or whatever.
Yeah.
I was that when the boys were growing up, because, you know, we have all these, you know, we're like, oh my God, from the time you find out you're pregnant, you're going to have the baby, right? To be honest,
Yeah.
You have the baby, you go to your doctor's appointments, you're eating right, you're doing all the things, you're doing all the things. So you become this cover, this protector early on.
Yeah.
And my soul was absolutely tied to my boys, because my main thing was, I want them to be gentlemen. I wanted my sons to be everything that I want to experience in the world.
Yes.
Right? And I'm not a man though, so I was producing my unhealed thought processes. It was a good, my intentions were great, but I had some unhealed thought processes. My son will be 28 years ago, and raising them, right? And
yes.
So I was giving them the smoke I was getting from being their daddy's wife.
Yeah.
Right? So it's very true. My soul was being taught, like, I'm a mama. So the Lord has delivered me.
Full circle, right?
He has delivered me.
180.
Sometimes I look
at a half circle, but 180. But
I'm looking at them like, son, that's not my weight. But that, like you said, that's whole thing. They be telling me something, I be like, oh, that's not my weight. And I mean it from my soul.
Yes, absolutely.
It's your weight. Like, tell me how that works.
Yeah, I think we should have that as a great topic coming soon, because we have this. Not a lot of women want to talk about it, not a lot of men want to talk about it, because even approaching it, not a lot of men know how to lead, because they won't follow, and they haven't led anybody. So, and you've had a lot of women who've had to lead.
Yes.
And their men aren't around, and those who are around, like Janet Jackson's song, "What have you done for me lately? Your dancing feet are always on my couch. If I didn't cook for us, we'd starve to death." And that has nothing to do in so many cases with amount of money you make, but it's about mindset and effort.
Yeah.
I think I watched an interview with Priscilla Shirer and her husband. She is obviously so much farther in, not obviously, cancel those words. In their relationship, her occupation places in her place that's in a higher stature than her husband. But her mindset, she's decided when she's in her relationship, she's still a wife, and when works and stands alongside her husband, they're equal, but he's the leader in their home, and their home is even more than outside of the home. But when she's in her occupation, walking in her ministry, she walks boldly in her ministry as the minister that she is, with the reminder that she's also a wife at the same time. And he leads her with the same mindset that, you know, she's got to be able to do what the Lord has called her to do. And I'm going to support her from near and from afar, but I'm not going to support her standing, blocking her unless I need to protect her from some oncoming attack. That's but if he allows her to be her, she allows her to be him, and they allow each other the grace to be who they are together when they're together, as well as when we're apart. And I don't see that from our men and women. But I mean, that's something we can dive into, of course, at another time. But until we get those relationships right, and we both yield and step up and yield, work together and effectively, we're never gonna get that thing right.
I love that. Oh,
that comes from a place of healing, though, and I can honestly say I've lived the opposite of that with very insecure partners in the past. And the way that my husband shows up for me, he's like, wait a minute, if you're going, I'm going, right? But at home, you've been at our house. I mean, I have a smart mouth, and it's quite sarcastic, and he loves it because he's like, he's giving it back to me. She's giving it back to me. He would not like me if I was like mousy and quiet or whatever, but there's a tone in his voice or a word that he'll say when he said he's going to listen to this later. I say, I know when you're mad at me because you call me sweetheart. because he never calls me sweetheart. You're not. I don't think you're listening. You know. So I'm like, oh, okay, I better be quiet now because he calls me sweetheart. Because usually it's love, babe, Michelle. If he calls me Michelle, he's only introducing me to somebody else. You know. So we know these things about each other, and I love how this is coming together because what you're talking about with that beautiful speaker and the couple is about the humble boldness. Yeah. And so I would love, as the closeout for our time today, why humble boldness?
Why humble boldness? Well, to be quite honest with you, during my soul searching, trying to figure out who I was in Christ, like why am I breathing? Why am I here? What is my purpose? Right? I was spending a lot of devotional time with God, like I do, and He told me that I need you to be humble in self and bold in me. And I was like, God, I am very humble. Like, what are you saying, God? I am a nice person. And what are you talking about? I don't walk around. How do you, I had this whole, worldly definition. And He says, daughter, it's about decreasing in yourself and being bold in me. And so the whole premise of my seasons of prayer devotional is about isolation and the valley, and then the gathering, and then the launch out. And the world will tell you sometimes that isolation and valley are bad things, like by yourself and you're alone. But the perspective that the Holy Spirit has given me in this particular book is the quite opposite. That when you're in isolation, you're in valley, you should get excited, because that means that's when the download is going to happen. Yes. And it's really about coming to the end of yourself. We've talked about experiences and other people and people's expectations of us. It's about coming to the end of what everybody thinks of you, including yourself, your titles and all that, and meeting God where He is. So then He can then tell you, this is who I want you to be. This is what I want you to experience. So really, the latter days can be better than the former days, for real. So it's like I'm giving you the formula. So that's what Humble Boldness is about. And it is a very fun, it's 57 pages with notes. I mean, that's not a lot. That's what's telling God. So it's like, it's not enough information. He's all, what I told you to do. So it has scripture and prayers, and it has my own little personal perspective in each section. It's available on Amazon. It's available on my website. DonMooreMinistries.live, but it's just your heart posture towards God when you really ready to grow and release self to get to Him. Yeah, so that's what it's about.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so proud of you, sister. And I know that part of your journey and part of what you're doing is being bold about your testimony so that other people can live and learn from your experiences, and then, document their own experiences and really develop a stronger relationship with God as the way that their relationship is supposed to be. So thank you so much for being on our show. We appreciate you. Craig, any last words?
No, I'm good. I've enjoyed this. I'm looking forward to the next conversation we're about to have, because I have a feeling that episode is going to be recorded pretty soon. And I'm curious to see how people respond, and actually how what people share it, because it's a topic that everybody wants to talk and be honest and true with. And on this show, that's all we know how to do, is be honest and true. So.
Awesome.
I am honored. Thank you guys so very much. And I'm not being funny, serious. I'm honored that you guys considered me to be on your passion project, right? Because it's the passion from the heart and the vision that you guys are putting forth. And I can't wait to do it again and again. And anytime you invite me, I'm going to come back, because this was really fun.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time, family. Love you.
Take care.
I came to win, I don't mean to offend. The greatest on the mic, mighty is with the pen. Losing never been a choice, but a line is a sin. Ascend in word, been in verse, birthed in the gym. Akin to the best, never aiming for less. Opposition so foul, got me calling for rest. Who's next to get bested? Mind, soul, and flesh is antithesis of mess. It's the precious supreme. So long, you better catch a God, throw him the scenes. Dreams manifested, you get what I mean? God always had a plan, He created for me. Success only means that I did what He seen. Got the game and the fans locked in like a key. Sitting on the throne with a crown, I'm a king. Sitting on the throne with a crown, I'm a king. Yeah, I think we got one.